All right. Well, good afternoon, Joe.
Mike.
How are you, sir? We're here for another edition of the Mortgage Update with Mike and Joe on this snowy day here in Rochester, New York. In April. I think Joe I just flew back from Charlotte. Was on a little PTO, and Saturday it was 85, sunny. So hopefully those warmer days are gonna follow us up here north here soon.
So we are in spring. Spring is in the air,
Right.
albeit in form of snow.
Right.
But as we look at spring, right, there's some nice traditions coming up, right? We got the Masters this
Yep.
week. Mm-hmm. Florida just won the national championship.
Exactly.
In interesting form.
I know.
So what when you think of spring, Mike, what are the things you look forward to?
No, I mean these past 2 weeks, just from just being a sports fan, I obviously love March Madness. It was great. I mean, the games were obviously a lot of them came right down to the last minute. But obviously, this week being Masters Week, I think it's such a I don't know. It's one of those things that it is the only major golf tournament that is hosted at the same place every single year, and it just seems to have a whole just aura, mystique to it that I just think is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So
I can hear Jim Nance now.
I love it. Yep.
Tradition unlike any other.
Tradition like any other. Hello, friends. So looking forward to it. So Joe, let's shift gears to the market. We just.
Oh, wait, don't forget about the big announcement.
Oh, that's right. The Buffalo Bills are returning to St. John Fisher this summer for camp.
Yeah.
So that's huge.
That's big. We got the draft coming up in a couple weeks.
Yep.
So next podcast, we'll get to evaluate all the draft picks and see how they did.
And I think not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but I think we do plan on hosting a podcast at the Bills camp again this
That'd
year.
be great.
Right?
We'd love that.
That's what the plan is. So that'll be exciting
photo
with a photo booth. So more to come on that. So obviously the first quarter's done, Joe. Obviously April, not to get ahead of ourselves, is obviously, and as we just discussed, is off to just a very fast pace. But what did March tell us about the market, and did we learn anything new or kind of more of the same?
A lot more of the same, unfortunately. Well, fortunately and unfortunately, I guess. We're seeing in the month of March in Monroe and surrounding counties, we averaged 17.5% over list, which was up from the 8% over list in February. If we zoom in just on Monroe County alone, it was 16.9% over list versus the 9% in the month before. We're continuing to see in Monroe and even in Onondaga County, as we learned last week, right? A lot of competition still out there. There's still a ton of demand from a buyer pool, not enough inventory.
Right.
Some of the same problems that we've talked about for the last couple of years, we're still seeing. We had a transaction, when we look at the listing data, we look for the kind of the wows, if you want to call it that.
Right.
I mean, we had a transaction in Pittsford that was listed for $299,900 and sold for $600,000. So 100% over ask. It's a big outlier. That's one to catch your eye.
That is unbelievable.
But that is the market, right? The market right now is still, multiple offer situations, offers going in, well over ask, and you really have to stand out.
So Joe, when you think about that specific transaction, which I think is obviously just one example, a little more extreme, but can you comment on kind of how are the appraisals coming in? How are appraisers working through this? I know you're on the phone with them all day long.
Yep.
I mean, what are you?
We're working through it. We're doing a lot of upfront due diligence on the appraisals to try and get ideas, where they may appraise. This particular transaction, and this is kind of the importance of having the right strategy. It was a GRB cash guarantee.
Right.
And so that allowed them to stand out from the pack and ultimately win the transaction.
Right, that's great. I mean, and on that, just real quick, Joe, I know that you've seen a real uptick in the use of the cash guarantee program. How many are you and the team really looking at on a weekly basis?
It's up there, and we're definitely seeing a big increase in the activity. Again, we do a lot of the work up front,
Right.
Not only from the underwriting, but also from the appraisal vetting. Really want to make sure we're looking out for the buyer's interest in those transactions.
Right.
And so those files need to be approved per property, right? So we're
right.
seeing, and we are starting to see, some buyers. First one, they're getting them accepted. But then there's other buyers where this is their third or fourth guarantee. Because again, it's not just about the guarantee. You also have to be there from a price perspective.
Right.
And so those are the instances where when we do see the guarantee not winning out, it's because they're not going high enough in price. And I think that takes time, right? As people get into the market and they're adjusting to the way the market is, understanding, these numbers, right? How much houses are going over ask. And, we shared out the listing data this month, so you can see it broken down by zip code to really get a feel for that.
Right.
So if we go down to, Onondaga and surrounding counties, we finished the month of March, we were 7.3% up over list price, which was up from 1.3% under list in the month of February. So big jump. We went, almost 8% in the other direction. Again, I think seeing more competition in those markets starting to heat up. As we had some conversations with agents, they are starting to see the multiple offer situations arise out there and just trying to get those offers accepted. And then when we just zoom in on Onondaga County by itself, we went from just about even at 0.10 under ask in February to 11% over ask in March.
Okay,
right?
so real and big.
Much bigger increase and shift there. Again, we look at for those outliers, there was one house in North Syracuse that went 10% over ask, listed for $189,900, sold for $230,000. So a little bit different, when we always talk about the tale of two worlds here, right in an hour down the hot throughway from one another. But, just continuing to see a lot of that same activity that we've seen.
And it just reminds us, I know we talk about this, every podcast, but the importance of realtors getting their buyers as prepared and pre-approved or cash plus guarantee, whatever that buyer can do to put themselves in a position to win is just so important. I think, Joe, you point out that we're probably getting close to 1 in 3 of every buyer transactions that we do starts out that way.
Yeah, and I think it just reemphasizes the importance, if you're a buyer, of aligning yourself with the right team, right? Which real estate agent, which loan officer, which bank, which title company, which attorney, all that stuff that comes into play when you're putting an offer together is, what does that team look like, and is that team the right team to set you up to win?
Right. So, Joe, obviously one of the things we did want to talk about today was, obviously, since we had our last podcast, there's been a lot going on. There's been a lot of news that is impacting just the stock market, the bond market, real estate. A lot of moving parts up there, and I've never seen the word uncertainty used more in my lifetime than the past probably 2 to 3 weeks. And I think, for the folks that listen or watch us, trying to make heads or tail of this is really hard. But I think the only thing that we can share, and I know that you can put this into context, Joe, in regards to what happened this past week, is the volatility of what is going on in the market right now in regards to the stock market, what's going on with mortgage rates, is, the movements that are taking place are happening within the same day. So maybe you can give some context to just what happened with rates, maybe like the middle of that of last week, what happened, and then what happened on Monday.
Yeah, the only certainty right now is uncertainty.
Right.
And we saw, mid last week, tariffs took place. The stock market tanked. People fled to safety in bonds. It drove the bond prices down, and we saw mortgage interest rates dip.
Right.
But in any form of volatility, mortgage rates dipped for 2 days. And then this week, over the weekend and then leading into Monday, we saw the bonds sell off a little bit, and the yields went back up above the 4s, where they had dipped below 4 last week, which drove that interest rate down. And so now we're back into an elevated, back to kind of where we were or where we
Right.
started from an
Right.
interest rate perspective last week. So, the one thing that we are having these active conversations with our buyers is if you're happy with the rate and the payment that you're being quoted, lock it. Because if you wait, as we saw, we talked to some people, we had some LOs talk to some clients on Friday about the possibility of looking at refis. Oh, let me think about it over the weekend. Well, come Monday, those refi opportunities are gone because rates have moved back
Right.
in the other direction.
Right.
So, that timing is going to be so important during this period of uncertainty that,
Right.
like I said, if you're happy with that rate and that payment that you're being quoted, get it locked in ASAP because, you don't want to take that chance on the upside.
Right, right. And again, just to remind everybody, we have programs in place that, hopefully at some point, things are going to settle down.
Yeah.
We're going to get into some rhythm. And, obviously, Joe, we improved our rate relief program. Do you want to share with everybody kind of what that was and how we extended that and the benefit to it?
Yeah, so the rate relief program allows, basically ensures buyers that if they do buy a home with us, we will do a refinance for them where we will waive our processing fee, our underwriting fee, and our appraisal fee, which comes to be about $2,000-ish in
Right.
savings if they refinance with us through the end of 2027. Now, we
Right.
did extend that out because it was only supposed to be through the end of 2025, but we pushed that out to the end of 2027 because of
Right.
this uncertainty that we're seeing in the market.
Right.
So that's been, that's kind of given some borrowers the peace of mind of saying,
Right.
you know what, this is temporary, and if rates drop, I'm gonna be able to take advantage of this.
Right. So tariffs is in the news every day, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've never heard the word tariff so much
I
in my
mean,
life.
it's, going back to the days of the Boston Tea Party, people
Right.
getting, but, you think about, tariffs and obviously, I think most people understand, obviously we do want to have, free trade,
Yep.
fair trade.
Right.
Fair and fair trade, free and fair trade. But, obviously that's part of what's driving the uncertainties, not knowing where this is all
Yeah.
going to land. So, I mean, Joe, again, as best you can, I mean, no one really knows what the future holds with all of this, but what impact do you see that this is having on our business? And, any advice that you could share with our listeners?
Yeah, I mean, I think, what we're seeing is, as we've seen consistently on Wall Street, is knee-jerk reactions, right? Well, the tariffs came out and the market tanked. And then there was news as recently as yesterday that now, the European Union wants to discuss free trade and what that looks like. And that sent markets back to the positive, right?
Right.
And, it's way too early to tell where all this is going to land. It appears a lot of it is a negotiating tactic to try and open the lines of communication that were just shut down.
Right.
And, hopefully, and I think the optimist says, you know what, this is going to work. We're going to establish this free and fair trade, and things will just kind of go back to normal as to almost where we were, or for the better for the United States. Where we see an impact is on building supplies. That's a big, if the tariffs hold, that's a big increase. We get a lot of our lumber from Canada.
Right.
We saw this during COVID with the supply chain issues, right? The price of lumber during projects tripled in some instances. The price of concrete, the price
Right.
of steel, right? So those are the ripple effects that we can see coming out of this is the already high price to build a house could become even higher,
Right.
With the tariffs in place. I do, think that, it's we kind of have to wait and see,
Yeah.
right? And we have to see how this all plays out, where the ultimate, numbers land
Right.
from that perspective. And, you hope that the people that are running the show, are right. But, it's hard to envision that at this point.
Yeah, the only thing I can add, because as Joe, I was just, when I was driving back from the airport today, listening to some news and some of the things that really can't be avoided is that obviously as the elections continue to come up, with these midterms, at that point, it's really hard for any party to stay in if the market is continuing to erode and tank and so forth. So again, we'll just have to see how all of that plays out,
Sure.
Down the road. And all we can do is to as best we can keep everybody, informed. One of the things that that we want to do is not only keep you updated on rates, but I think also, like you did up front, Joe, really trying to share with the listeners, the realtors that are on this call, that to really understand how do you get your buyer, how do you get your offer accepted in this very competitive environment. And obviously, we host a lot of events where we try to talk about that, but we're going to continue to try to share what is the secret sauce, to getting your offer accepted in what is still a very, very competitive market.
Yeah, and I think we continue to see the phases that buyers go through, right? When we get my pre-qualification letter, I really like this house, I want to make an offer.
Right.
Oh, I lost by $100,000. Okay, what can I do better? And then it's, well, let's strengthen your offer with a pre-approval or a cash plus.
Right.
And then we get that offer straight through the pre-approval or cash plus, and they submit a stronger offer, but they still lose out by $20,000.
Right.
I was like, all right, well, the next phase would be, let's get to the cash plus guarantee.
Right.
Right, and let's make you the strongest buyer you can be out there.
Right.
And then now they start to come around from a price perspective and from an offer strategy perspective, and lo and behold, they're able to get their offers accepted.
Right.
And we've had, for those buyers that can't do the full 20% and take advantage of the cash plus guarantee, we've definitely seen those buyers that do the 10% down cash plus and are still having a lot of success in
Right.
getting their offers accepted.
Right.
And that's the important part, is just understanding what those strategies have to be. And unfortunately, sometimes the buyer has to go through that on their own and get there on their own.
Right.
But if they can lean on us and the real estate agent to skip some of those steps,
Right.
To get them set up for success, I think that's where we see those buyers that come out more successful, is allowing the experts to kind of guide you into what you need to
Right. Right. All right, Joe, well, listen, we're coming up to the end of our podcast. Any other words of wisdom you would share with our listeners?
do. No, I don't have any today.
Don't have any today?
Get your coat on. It's cold outside.
Yeah, it is cold outside. But again, we will continue to keep everybody informed. I would encourage everybody, every Monday, there is an update that comes out from Joe that talks about rates, programs. Encourage you guys to, read it, inquire. And if there's anything else that you would like us to talk about, please make us aware, and we'll make it a topic going
I
forward.
did think of one piece of advice.
Yes, go ahead.
Buckle up. It's going to be a bumpy ride.
It's going to be a bumpy ride. Okay, there it is. Peace out. Thank you.